In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can create conditional formatting rules in Google Sheets that are tied to specific cells. And the advantage of doing this is you no longer have to worry about hard coding values in your conditional formatting. You can instead link to certain cells, and then just by changing those cells, your conditional formatting rules will update as well. So here's how this works. So here I've got a list of stocks and how they've done in a particular month in previous years. And what I want to do is highlight the top performers versus the bottom performers, and also highlight when stocks have done better or worse than the average. So I'm going to create 3 separate fields here, one for a maximum threshold, one for an average, and one for a minimum. Now I don't actually mean I'm pulling in the maximum value or the minimum value. Instead, I'm setting up the threshold, the cutoff point, to say, okay, if it falls into this category, that's my maximum category, my highest. This is my top performers. So I'm not going to use the max function. Instead, what I'm going to do is use the large function to say I want the largest or the third largest value, let's say in this data set. So I'm going to select my entire range here. I'm going to look at those values and return, let's say, the third largest value. I don't want the absolute highest. So 37.32%, that's fairly high for a monthly return because there is a lot of volatility on here. You can see there's some returns that are really high for a certain month. So what I may want to do is multiply this by a factor of, let's say, 0.5 to bring it down to 18.6%. Whatever. The point is you can adjust this to whatever you want. Now for the average, it's even simpler. I'm just using the average function and selecting these values to say the average monthly return across all these stocks was 1.94%. So that's going to be my cutoff point when I'm looking at above average and below average returns. As for the minimum, I'm going to do the same thing here, except instead of using the large function, I'm going to change this to the small function. And I can apply similar logic to say, take that smallest, the third smallest return, and multiply it by a factor of 0.5. So minus 8.36%. So now with that set up, I can go and set up my conditional formatting rules. So I'm going to select this entire range and go to Format, Conditional Formatting. And there's an option so I'm going to leave this as a single color scale as opposed to the color scale, because in that case, I'm going to actually have to hard code values in here, and that's what I want to avoid doing. With the single color, I have a bit more flexibility because I can say, okay, I want the values to be greater than a certain amount, but I can also use a value or a formula. So I could key in a value, but I can also link to a certain formula. And so my max value was here in cell N5. So I'm going to say if the value is greater than N5. So I'm going to type in equals. That's important to make sure that I'm telling it Google Sheets this is a formula. And now I'm freezing the cells by using a $ for N and another $ for the row number 5. And so as you can see, once I've set that up, it's automatically now highlighting any values that are more than 18.66%. So it's really effective in grabbing the attention of these cells and saying these were the best performing stocks based on that criteria. So I've done that, and now I can click on add another rule, and by doing so, it basically copies that rule that I've just set up. So now let's say I want to focus on that minimum value N7, and in this case I want to look at less than, and if it's less than that threshold, I'm going to highlight it as, let's say, dark red, set the text to white, and even though it looks like it's white, it's set to an automatic formatting here, so you want to actually go ahead and change it to white if it looks off and it's not correct. So now I've got my highest and lowest values highlighted, so it's easy to see which stocks did well in different years. And in case you're wondering, this is for the month of August in these historical returns. So August of 2022, August of 2021, and so on. So that's how I've got those set up. Now let's also create rules for that average. So I'm going to create another rule once again. This time I'm looking at row 6. So I'm freezing N6. So this time slightly below average. And so I'm going to use a lighter shade of red. And in this case, let's maybe use a bit lighter, and I'm gonna use a black text in this case. So I've done that. Create another rule, and this time I'm gonna say greater than, so it's above average, and in this case use a light shade of green, and now I've highlighted those values. And so as you can see, now it's just a matter of setting up what I want these values to look like. So if I decide, okay, I want my green to be a little brighter, a little deeper when it's done really well, just to stand out a bit more, you can fine tune this as you want. But as you can see, now you've set up conditional formatting rules. This is effectively, if you were to set up a color scale in the sense, but because we're referencing specific cells, we need to go through the single cell format where we're setting up these rules, linking them to cells. And the big advantage here is, let's say we decide, okay, we're highlighting too few or too many of these values based on these thresholds, we can go in and adjust them. So let's say this max value, I multiplied it by 0.5. Let's say I multiply it by 0.3, so the threshold is lower, it's going to highlight more cells. When I do that, you'll now see that there's more highlighting that has that dark green highlighting, because now the cutoff point is 11.19%. I don't have to go in and calculate this and then update my cells. I can just make all the calculations on here, and that's going to automatically update. I can do the same thing for this one. Let's say I change this from 0.5 to, let's say, 0.7 or 0.3. I want to include more values, right? Depending on what you want. I do that. Now we've got more highlighting. So it makes it really easy now to dynamically make these changes. And another benefit is you can see what these cutoff points are. You don't have to go in and look at the conditional formatting rules to see, okay, maybe I've made a mistake, I've set something up incorrectly. Because they're linked to cells, you can easily see what they are and make changes right there, right on your spreadsheet. So that's how we can set up conditional formatting rules in Google Sheets that are tied to specific cells. If you did like this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more like it. Thanks for watching.